Really? Really? A year and a half later, and God only knows how many millions of dollars, and subpoenas, and all of the PR and the ugliness back and forth, and you get literally 2 weeks to the day before the trial is set to begin. And settlement? Well, hindsight being 2020, turns out, just like any toxic relationship, the writing was on the wall. Let's talk about it. Well, guys, like many of you, I was a bit caught off guard with the entire Baldoni Lively settlement that came out today. A lot of people seem to be very shocked about it. Poor Andy over at Popcorn Planet, I caught some of his coverage of it, and man, that guy's, I thought his head was going to pop off. He's going through it. He's having some feelings about it. But I get it on his end because he's put a lot of time and a lot of money into this. And so a lot of people that really have come along for the ride on this thing, and they've hopped in, they've given time, they've given money, they've given online support, they've been digging into the case and revealing things. There are a lot of people that had a lot of, at least, time and emotional investment into this case. But here we are, a year and a half later, 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, and there's a settlement. Now, what is surprising about this is that Blake all along has been screaming that, oh, she's not going to settle, she's not going to settle, not settling. This is for the victims of harassment, and this is for the blah, 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 all the nonsense. And we now clearly see what nonsense it actually is, and has been all along, which most of us on the side of truth, not necessarily Baldoni's side, just the side of truth, have been seeing all along, ever since January of 25, when Justin started coming out and firing back like, no, it didn't go down like this. Receipts, 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 bam. And so really, ever since that time, it's been mostly Baldoni dunking on her left and right with all the receipts. Of course, Brian Freeman came on, and what he did for PR and the great revealing that he did along the way that literally shifted the entire public opinion and that entire public narrative that was all over YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, and all of the independent journalists and the YouTubers and people with podcasts coming together and talking truth. And that's one thing that's given me hope and made me so excited in being a witness to that, and being a very, very small part of it, is seeing the people en masse come out to support this man that, frankly, let's be honest, 98% of the people out there had no idea who this guy even was before any of this went down. And now they know him very well. They know Wayfarer very well. And that is one good thing, is that his name and Wayfarer as a small studio, people know who they are now. And will that change the way things happen in the films that they produce and the films that they make? And what Baldoni does as far as acting, if he acts moving on from this, which, I don't know, we'll see. But I guess one of the questions on people's minds is why? Or perhaps more importantly, or more accurately, why now? And so I want to go through and look at a few reasons as to why the writing has been on the wall for this for quite some time, but also things that have come out recently that really, supported Justin even more, and probably up to the point of there's no way we, Lakeside, can actually win this thing. And Blake and Ryan stood to lose, well, everything in the end, potentially. So let's just talk about a few of the reasons why that, if you go back and look and really pay attention, you could kind of see this coming. Again, people are asking, why today? Why Monday, May 4th? Why not when Judge Lyman threw out the 10 of the 13? Why not last year when Justin was just literally dunking on Blake left and right with receipts? Why today? Well, we can look back and we can see that really a lot of times settlements and these trials and things, they do go this way. If you go back and watch a lot of the lawyers on YouTube talk about this, the people who are familiar with court and how these cases go. Many of them, including Ron on Andy's show, Popcorn Planet, were still very heavily talking about settlement, mentioning over and over again that, yeah, they can literally settle, like, right up until it happens all the time. And a lot of them called it, even up to this late day. They said they're still going to settle, they're going to settle. I've heard it from many different content creators and, lawyers that they bring onto their show. So, settlement was still an option. Always. Why? Was it a plan A or a plan B? No, it was plan Z. So why are we implementing plan Z 2 weeks before? Well, that's a great question. Because up until it was going to be a fight to the end. We're doing this for blah, 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 blah. But then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, it's like, oh, we settled. It's over. Done. What? Excuse me? Well, most of you probably saw the same thing that I did, which is two major revelations happened over this past weekend, the 2nd and the 3rd. And that is, firstly, that Blake Lively destroyed evidence. She destroyed or ordered the destruction of Dailies. Why does that matter? Well, the turning point, inarguably a major, maybe not the, but a major turning point in this narrative for public opinion was the dance sequence, the scene. She said, this, and this happened during the filming of this scene. Justice said, no, it didn't. We were doing our jobs, acting and directing. You were doing a little more of my job, but that's neither here nor there. But the thing she didn't count on, because they were just using background and so forth and so on, she didn't count on there being sound. And they had it. You guys will remember this. So in what was to be the big SH where it comes in and she proves this and she says this, Baldoni actually had 3 different takes of the scene in question and the dialogue that was being said between them. She didn't know they were recording that. Because typically, those scenes are shot, they put music behind them, all kinds of, things like that. They don't actually take sound. They're just rolling camera. And she thought that's what was happening. But no, they had sound. So then they came in and showed not just like what was happening in the nuzzling and all these other things that she was saying, but what was being said between these two actors and this director and actress, or director and wannabe director producer. Because what they said to each other and what she said and how she acted did not match the claims that she was making. Boom, bald-faced lie. When everyone can see that this is not it, and there's a tangible bit of proof, it's rough. Now, this is what happened in v.Heard. They were never, ever able to have audio or visual proof of Johnny Depp being physically abusive to Amber Heard. But what they did have was that one piece of audio, if you remember, of Johnny saying, "You hit me." She said, "No, I didn't hit you. I just lightly slapped you." "No, you hit me." That was donezo for that case. And so here when Blake is coming forth and saying, he harassed me, he did this, and it was not scripted, and this. And then Justin comes out, yeah, actually, you know what? We've got the video and the audio of that. So here you go. Nice try. Not good for her. So then the question becomes, why did this actress, not producer, not director, why did this lead actress try to call the producers after the movie had come out? That's the key here. Why was she ordering Ann Janetti to destroy the Dailies? Why was she trying to bully Sony, the studio, into destroying the extra footage from a movie that had already premiered and come out and played? Like I said, that's a little bit of information there. Because the texts, they're not July, they're not June, they're not May, they're September. It Ends for Us came out in early August. The film had already come out and premiered and done most of its run. Why is the lead actress coming out? Well, most people can put 2 and 2 together. It came out, and what we saw, what's the evidence of the retaliation and the bullying and the bots and the smear campaign, what the evidence showed as far as any kind of retaliation was that the data doesn't back it up. Because all of it happened once all of the things about Blake Lively started coming out. And these things were not about stuff that was just being planted here and there. These things were coming out by her own hands, her own doing, and things she was saying and doing on the red carpet, on interviews, at the premiere, putting somebody in the basement of his own film. All of this was coming out, bam, bam, bam. Jersey Flaw's interview. All of it came out, and you could see by the data points that Blake's popularity or likability or whatever you want to call it was tanking in accordance with what was happening with her behavior in the public. It was right there. So by this time, September, she's already freaking out and having an egotistical panic attack over her brand and her character and what's happening. Because now, of course, all of her Betty Boop Buzz business, whatever, that's all tanking as well. But that was tanking because she used a movie that was about DV to promote alcohol and hair products, while Justin was over here talking about victims and making a story and, being on the right side of things. But no, she was freaking out. And so she already started crafting a plan. And she was crafting that plan with the man who has been scandalously behind this the entire time, paging Mr. Reynolds. And that, of course, brings us to the second thing, which is Mr. Rai himself, in a conversation about the differing cuts, one Justin's, one Blake's. In that conversation, talking about these cuts and how they performed and how they were going to move forward with those cuts in the little bake-off deal. She says that she was talking to Blake and Ryan on the phone, and then goes on to talk about Blake's demands, or Blake, working with her on the cut and saying, we need this, we got to get that, don't do this, blah, blah, blah. And she says Blake, but then in parentheses, Ryan. Now, a lot of people have taken this to mean that really, whenever Blake's name comes up with anything to do with the creative aspect, that really we're talking about Ryan. Now, we don't know if this is true or not. The parentheses, this could be meaning something else, like, and he's included here too as the husband because he's involved in all of her decisions, blah, blah, blah. But I want to do a separate piece talking about Ryan and his involvement. We're never going to know, right? This is one of the truths that we're never going to know with this. But I'm going to make a different episode explaining the trajectory of his involvement and psychologically what happened and what that looked like, and start to posit a theory of what his involvement may have actually been and how much of it actually is stemming from him. This, of course, is nothing new. Many people have been speculating about this really since the whole rooftop scene debacle, and then him creating what was the Deadpool nice pool. Yeah, so people have been talking about this. It's nothing new. But now that we've actually gotten to an end, we were waiting to see what was going to come out, because that was going to tell a story. Look how much we learned from the Great Unsealing just a few months ago about him specifically. And that also brings me to the other point of settlement. These things coming out about him, they're quite damning. And Blake is one thing, and her reputation and so forth and so on. But look, what Ange is referring to in this letter is, I know this sounds mean, but whatever, she's mean. Blake really isn't much of anything talent-wise, creatively, in Hollywood, in the business, on the creative side of things, in that industry. It's him. And when we see Sony bending over backwards, when we have Justin Baldoni, who's scared out of his mind, he was scared because he showed up at their house, and Ryan Reynolds, who's 6'2" and jacked or whatever, is literally abusing him verbally, mentally, emotionally, screaming at him for hours. Was it 5 or 6 hours? They said. Justin got out of the thing and texted his boys and I would literally just had the most awful, traumatic thing and one of the worst nights of my life, he says. And yeah, makes sense. You think you're on your way over to the big movie star's penthouse in New York, you're going to talk a little shop, talk a little whatever, and then you're met with just a 5-hour, berating from Van Wilder? Are you kidding me? But it happened. We're starting to see why Martha Stewart was he acts like he's funny, but he's not. So, this is the deal. They know that they're dealing with Ryan in all of this. And I've got another text message thing I'm going to put in that other video as well. Point being that this is not just a Blake thing. This is very much a Ryan thing. And that reputation is not trying to get tarnished any more than he already has severe anxiety. He cares very much about what other people think of him and talent and, his manners. He very much plays up the quirky Canadian guy. I'm not trying to be... He said it himself. Just going by what he puts out there. So, that's the other part, is that when we're talking about Ryan Reynolds, it's not just a man that's creative. We're talking about a billion-dollar enterprise. And that is a completely different thing than talking about a B-list actress who kind of got lucky with this movie. So, more on that to come another time. But his name was mentioned there. And it gives this impression that, yeah, we're dealing with a conglomerate here. And Sony and WME, they're all going to suck up to these people, just as we saw the cast members do on the set. Why? Because that's how this town works. It's how that industry works. It's all about this hierarchy. That's all a bunch of absolute nonsense. To begin with, a hierarchy based on ego and star wattage. That is confused wattage for power. It means absolutely nothing in the end of it. Except for here, in a suit, where we're talking about the game and the show. I'm going to make another video talking about the show, getting to what my real thoughts and feelings are about this and the overall theme. Because even this stuff, they're important little details, but the larger theme is what I've always been interested in, and that deserves its own attention. But for now, we're going to take that conglomerate, that billion-dollar baby that is Mr. Rai, and look at another billion-dollar baby that's even bigger than him. Remember T Swift? Yeah. What's happening with her next month? Anybody know? Yeah. Oh, and guess who is supposedly not going to be there? Remember that? So, let's think back to who's the most important man in Taylor's life. I'll give you a hint. It's not the man that she's going to be standing at the altar with this time next month, or whenever it is. No, it's Daddy. Now we all remember how Daddy Swiftie is, what that means and what happens when his baby girl, but also his billion-dollar baby girl, gets some bad press, gets in a little bit of trouble coming on. Remember who made the phone call to Brian Friedman, okay? This is important. I'm telling you, this is important. Who made that phone call to Brian Friedman? What was said on that phone call? We'll never know. But let me posit just a theory to you to consider. What happens if Discovery goes on and more text messages come out? We already know that Blake asked her to delete things. We already know that Blake tried to get her to come out and say something supportive publicly. She didn't want to. You have to remember that these two were besties. BFF all the way. Blake was a godmother. No, wait. Taylor was the godmother to her children. What? So you're going to tell me that in all of that time, that there aren't more text messages between them, more things that are written in conversation about what happened here, about what they were doing, what was going on to her bestie? What was Daddy Swift making that phone call about? What was he trying to hide? What was he trying to protect? Because this isn't the first time that he stepped in for his billion-dollar baby. It's just speculation. I'm just saying. His involvement here, it's not a coincidence. It's important. Going off of that, T Swift is her own conglomerate. And along with her, we have Sony Pictures. Because guess what? Guess what's also in text messages? Guess what's also written about here? Guess who is also saying things? And yeah, they're saying things against Blake. She's a terrorist and she's epic level stupid for what she's doing, which they were right both times. But what else is going to come out? Because they may have accepted and bootlicked when Ryan was sending 1,000 plus word text messages to his agent, Ron Zavala at WME. They may have said, okay, bootlicked, put on a happy face when he's sending the same type of emails to them, Sony. But what else was said there when he wasn't a part of the conversation? I'm going to make a separate video about control and what's happening in the conversations that are not being presided over. There are words, exchanges, there are slanderings, we saw what happened with unsealing just a few months ago, and how much damage that did to Tay-Tay, Rai, and all the rest. Even Justin doesn't come out as sparkle clean, there's things in there that are not so much flattering, but he's still, by all means, looking like, or at least appearing, a great guy, unlike these other folks. But that's the thing. Justin, maybe he'll go on work. We'll see. But these other three, well, we'll say 2.5. Taylor, Ryan, these are massive, massive stars. And when this industry is looking at these people, they're not just looking at, Ryan Reynolds, the quirky whatever guy, Deadpool, Van Wilder. No, they're looking at empires. And there are words in the empire, male, that they don't want people to see. Why? Revelations. Revelations in words that can crumble empires. Why? Because ultimately, we pay for those empires. They didn't make it all on their own. Who went to see those movies? Who went to the Eras tour? Who bought all the albums? Who sat through how many Deadpool movies are there? I don't even know. I have no interest in those, just my opinion. I'm just posing questions. I'm going to dive into these subjects in other videos. And I would like to ask you guys, I was planning on making and dropping these between now, over the next 2 weeks, and then going into the trial, and I was going to do trial coverage, but obviously I am not a news channel. I'm a channel that does reflection pieces on, psycho-spiritual and the philosophical nature of these things. And, storytelling, Hollywood, Los Angeles, that's one of my areas. But of course, that's over. There's no trial coming. But I still have some ideas that I want to cover. And if you guys don't mind, I would love if you would chime into the comments and tell me, are those subjects that you would still like to see? Things looking at, because all of this, just because there's a settlement, just because this is over, what I'm doing, which is ultimately this inquiry into Hollyweird Babylon, all of that is still very much at play here. And so there's a couple of episodes that I want to do. And so if you guys don't mind, obviously if you don't want to see anything, you're like, I'm tired of these people, let's stop talking about it. Cool, great. You don't have to put anything. I thank you for being here the time you were here, for sure. But if you are interested in that and pulling back and looking at some of the psychology and the inner workings of what may have actually happened here, drop a line in the comments and let me know. I don't want to go work on those if nobody wants to see them. I think it's interesting, but there's a lot of other things going on in the world right now too. And if everybody's like, this has been too long, we don't care about these people, move on, then cool, I got you. But yeah, if you don't mind, let me know. But in the meantime, I know other information is starting to come out about this. I wanted to jump on and have like a midnight ramble about just people are having mixed feelings about this, and I get it. And I've tried to be positive about it in this video, but if I'm being honest, which I strive to be on this channel, I'm disappointed. Although I probably felt more than a lot of people that this was very much, I was looking to the lawyers and see what they say, because they know how these things go. Entertainment, coverage people, they don't always know this side of it. And so I had a feeling that it would go this way, especially if more damning evidence started to come out in discovery. And woof, we only got one weekend into it, and they're like, nope, no, we're not going down this again. We're not going down this road. Not happening. Zoop. And there's, people said stuff about the Met Gala, which it's not my thing, so I don't know. But yeah, it's interesting. And I'm disappointed because I don't feel that justice was served here at all. And I am going to save that for the video that I'm definitely making, regardless, about the larger themes at play here, the psychological and philosophical and the spiritual nature of this entire story, and why and how it unfolded in this way. So, this is way longer than I thought it was going to be. Sorry for the rant. I got all kinds of stuff. I didn't prepare this. I just hopped on and started talking. All of this just happened. But if you're still here, let me know in the comments if you feel like watching other things. I appreciate that. Thank you. And in the meantime, take care of yourselves. And let's, if you don't feel like going to support certain entertainers and people anymore, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that at all. Hold your ground there, because at the end of the day, it's the people that sign the paychecks for all entertainers. And there's power in that, depending on your point of view. But I thank you for being here. Until next time, take care of yourselves. And let's hope that at least maybe some of these people have peace and love, if not justice for all. Till next time.